Colleagues, good afternoon. My name is Konstantin Ankilov, Temta Consulting. I am the moderator for this session for technical aspect for ICT, and participants of our session now are technical leaders of all key Russian communication companies and also a representative from Kazakhstan and head of one of the leading vendors. And I would like to invite Viktor Belov, MTS, here to join me here on the stage. Valery Viktorovich Shorzhin, Wimpelcom. Andrei Grachov, MegaFon. Nurlan Meirmanov, Kazakhtelecom. And Igor Akulinin, Huawei. Colleagues, we have a session for an hour, a small session, a round table, a panel. We do not have a table. We're not seated in a circle. But anyway, let's speak about networks and technologies. That, of course, we plan to speak about what we have now and the current achievements, but we mostly focus on the future during the session because the session's title is Connect the Future. Connect the future. So how networks will look like and how technical infrastructure will look like for what we call communication operators. But we are more than communication operators. How will it look like in the coming 5 years? What image the infrastructure will have for the leading companies of our two countries? So first of all, for us not to make it a display of achievements of every operator, let's just focus and narrow down our subject down to the challenges that operators face from the point of view, and we mentioned that during the previous sessions, from the point of view of commerce and how to earn money, and also from the standpoint of network infrastructure. What problems, what new tasks you might face or you have already faced in the coming, and what you expect in the coming 5 years. So let's have a discussion now. Who's ready to speak? Please start. I will moderate the discussion. Please, you're welcome. It's a deadlock now. So let me start. Okay, fine. I'm the closest one to you in this panel. So, I mean, the main challenges that we all face is certain merger of network with infrastructure of other types, cloud infrastructure, first of all, and changes in the format of how operators will build their networks in the future. And this is quite organic movement and development. Just to clarify what I mean, if you look at how operators worked 10 or 15 years ago, it looked like a mono-vendor network, and the majority of risks were on the side of the vendor. Operator was a pump for capex, just sending investments to vendors, and vendor was in charge of everything. And after a certain period of time, operators had to create more competition when businesses were pushing them, and the market responded. Various components of network could be used from various vendors. The network became more fragmented. And then the next stage was it got even more fragmented, and now we are organically approaching a stage where the majority of the major responsibility stays or will stay on the side of the operator, segmenting suppliers of solutions and software and equipment will get even more significant, and the whole picture is changing. It requires from operators requires new expertise it never had before, and it is a real challenge, because you start you start fighting for these people and expertise in a completely different market. That's not the market that where we have six players of this size in Russia, and they fight for people with such competences. But now it's a larger number of companies from other sectors, industries with more profitable business models sometimes, and this is a challenge indeed. Restructuring the perception of what we do by people and by ourselves, and the responsibility that engineers working for operators, they take on their side, they take the expertise, and of course it is a challenge for producers and suppliers, because they will have to, at a point of time, they will have to keep up with it and get to know how to live in this segmented market of software and equipment. I would add to that, apart from the fact that network infrastructure, UIT part of it got more complicated, we just can have a look at, I support Viktor in this, how voice is transmitted in LTE networks and how many interfaces there are in the network. And now it gets pretty clear what the situation is. Implementation of digital projects is also a large important thing for the market. We now get deeper into how power industry is structured, what needs they have, and to offer a comprehensive solution. That's the task. And apart from the trend for more complicated IT element, we also see aggressive growth of traffic. And the first part, I mentioned digital projects, and number two, growth of traffic shows that now it is more difficult for us to meet these challenges without 5G networks, because 5G networks means more opportunities, more devices per one cell, and lower latency and more speed. But this means additional spectrum, and we cannot develop without it in today's world. I would add to that, actually, nothing new, but the network is keeping up with IT now. And I agree to what Viktor says. In 5 years, I think we won't have network elements, but netlets that will be launched in a cloud. They will be fine-tuned for a specific client or a specific app. And in order to manage all these things, we need robots that will be able to manage other robots. And the network should be much smarter than it is today. It should know how to self-organize, how to self-manage without participation of people. That's one of the main problems, I think. So it's not just about splitting the traditional elements into parts and say that this is network, this is apps, this is something different. The problem is how to bring it all together and how to monitor all that. But the main problem, not technical problem here, is in the following. In telecom as an industry, I see two fundamental problems. First is growth of traffic, and profits of our market is not growing as much. And if we look at the results of Q2, in traffic, mobile operators take around 30%, but financial results are much modest. And telecom doesn't know now how to effectively monetize the traffic. The value that other participants of this process get is not what we get today. And that's problem number one. Number two, related to consumption and clients. The form factor of consumption we all got used to starting 2007. The smartphone we got used to, this black box, it is obsolete, I think, because we do not see new subscribers, wearables and underwear or clothes. They do not become our customers, and this prevents us from further development and further investments into development of the network. And comparing against all the rest, these two fundamental problems cannot be solved by an operator, a player on its own. This should be coordinated effort of participants, players of the market, and probably not only the telecom market, but adjacent markets. And in our session, we have this word ecosystem. And despite the perception of this word, I think without new partnerships between players, we will not be able to cope with it on our own. Neither spectrum nor other limitations, power supply and other things. Okay, thank you. Yes, please, Nurlan. I think the main decision operators should make is to go away from telecom principles when structuring new systems of the future and go to native cloud architecture solutions in order to have the networks of the future that allow operators to develop and to survive, actually, looking and considering the competition in the market against global players. That's why this transition is very important, and we think that we should aim at disaggregation, splitting software and hardware, and we need to try and make infrastructure and software as open as possible, not building infrastructure network, but building networks of services, a microservice approach. You're all aware of that. And to ensure maximum participation of your own developers for more flexibility of the company, it's better to go to open software and white boxes to have universal architecture for various solutions. And you see global players with public clouds easily can substitute private solutions from vendors. And this allows to get to the market faster, allows startups to get to the market faster if they have access to infrastructure or various frequencies. Rakuten, for instance, a very well-known case, or Indian operators, they architecture-wise, they changed their approaches for the coming 5 to 10 years. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Yes, please, Igor. Question about challenges. What we see, the main challenge, probably it is positive or a negative thing, but this is growth of traffic. Colleagues already mentioned that. For 2021, we plan to launch around 100 exabytes. In 5 years, it's around 600. In 10 years, it is around 3,000. So this is exponential growth, really, and this is a huge challenge. Why this traffic is growing?
No.
Obviously, more subscribers, not only individuals but machines. Transport will generate a new wave of connections. It's more consumption of video, high-quality video by all layers of population on the one hand, and it is the 5G response. It's already, while we are getting down to this solution, 5G is in itself one, and it increases the traffic. For instance, if the road was narrow and then it became bigger, wider, so more traffic. So we can see Korea and China, well, it's digital growth. Digital, for instance, you can it's 10 times higher consumption because it's easy to do, and fixed price access and the use. So that's one layer of it. The second is that a lot goes to the cloud, and the load over the network increases irrespective of the content. And this year, a very interesting event has occurred. The traffic in cloud, inter-cloud traffic of enterprises, just ordinary traditional industry, exceeded the traffic of OTT giants. Those we know well, Amazon, Google, Facebook. So that's a quantitative measurement showing that digitalization goes on underway. And for us as a vendor, it's a challenge because the network's becoming complicated. We respond, but and it should not be more expensive for the operator. Of course, the operator is interested in the absolute price. So the network management's becoming more complicated, and the operator has his own processes, optimization, and simplification issues stand out. 5G, thousands of parameters you have to control hourly, which is impossible to do without automation and digitalization of telecom industry or operator itself. And such things, such general things, though they sound very general, but realistically they are included into the economy, which is ecology, environment, protection of environment, quite tough requirement at the moment. We are international company, and we feel the pressure, which is quite a challenge for us. We have to do something. We have to respond accordingly, and it costs money. Okay, thank you. Good. Still 5G. This topic was mentioned 3 times in the first question. So, readiness of 5G. How about it is in Russian realia and in Kazakhstan, respectively, and how the companies are ready for that, and whether you're going to do something irrespective of the regulatory changes that we hope will be implemented. As well, you've been for a long time in the industry, and you remember what was going on with 3G and then 4G. The history repeats. So readiness, 5G readiness. What is the status? What are you going to do or doing something? Well, I think the question here is whose readiness? Of the market? Yes. Operator of the operator. I think that the operator, thank God, is ready. Is quite ready. It's a high degree of readiness, I should say. And having gone this long way, there was 30 years of mobile network in Russia anniversary. So we are lagging behind a little bit from the Western colleagues, but very reasonably so. Sometimes in some way even. We are in front of them. So I think it's very high degree of readiness. Every operator has pilot zones, and they know how the network is going to be readjusted. The question is, and the market is ready. Well, talking to major customers, I know, first of all, B2B clients, we can see that there's demand from them. For all those things, and many now understand why they need it and what and how they will benefit. Some just experimenting, trying to understand why they need it. The demand is there. I mean, so in our market, this thing related to the readiness of the regulator and the state, and we have to shift it through dead point. To clarify about the demand from enterprises, is it a comprehensive or for some specific services? What services do they need? Please specify. Well, it's, for instance, an automotive factory. They don't need to deliver packages from one place to another. So their problems might be very different. For instance, to upgrade their mobility of their industrial equipment, like, for instance, conveyor belt readjusted, speed increased, or down to logistical center, maybe some robots for transportation inside a plant or a company. So they want some vertical solutions, but there are 2 ways we work with it. in some of the verticals, we can see clients, customers are interested, and we find partners to sell the solution jointly. And there's a reverse situation sometimes when we do have partners who, based on our infrastructure, can build up their own solution. And when they come down to those customers with their solution, we actually find ourselves there, inside there, automatically. Well, I would add here and I agree that all the operators have their pilot zones. We have tested the 5G and felt and touched it. Still, there are questions about ecosystem, and I'm not talking about IT component, some personal accounts or what. But I mean to say that we have some uncertainty with the spectrum, and we know that not all bands and frequencies are supported equally by vendors of terminal equipment or operators, and there are issues of compatibility. 5G. We are testing 16th release, and there's voice transfer, and who in the audience can say how many devices can support this service, though 5G phones already in all the shops. Well, as usual, as it used to be with LTE, further development is underway, and we should not say that that's it and we are stopping. No, the movement will continue, and we can see it going forward. What we saw last year in our pilot zones and testing zones, and what we can see now, we can see that it's moving and moving fast. Without the decision of the regulator Viktor mentioned, indeed, to launch it full-fledged, we will not be able to do. So the main focus and the main question today for our market. Thank you. Yes, maybe I would continue to say that I would draw a borderline between the mass and industrial market, because industrial market has both interest and demand, and the requirements and that 5G might satisfy it. Well, not a fact, but still. In B2C, in mass market, I don't know about my colleagues, but it's a big question of payback. Clear enough that it will require a lot of money, but what about the revenue for the investments? Even in case we will settle all other issues with the spectrum, with infrastructure, and I'm always talking about infrastructure because for me, 5G means a big number of smaller stations, base stations, for the gigabytes to be handed over to the consumers. And even if we solve the question of access of operators to municipal infrastructure, even if we radiophobia issues will be closed, and the residents will not be against those base stations near their buildings, but still there will be questions. But in B2B, well, but Beeline experience shows that, we have a big number of pilots underway, like our colleagues have to. And corporate industrial clients and private LTE and private 5G, our experience shows that if you take over 100% of client requirement and 60% goes to implement 60%, you don't need any 5G. 4G will be quite enough. Another 20% would be impossible to implement even using 5G, and 20% or 10% will really need the new technology. That's the peculiarity of 5G. You mean the demand already is for 6G? Well, we compete in private networks. We compete with Wi-Fi. And Wi-Fi not marking time either, developing. And it's not yet finished, not clear who's to win. And there's always, there are some other open standards like Internet of Things and other alternative solutions out there. the way the Internet of Things is made up. Oh, thank you very much. Yes, and what about the situation with 5G? Maybe not all colleagues are aware of that. What's in your republic? Yes, we are testing, as well as our colleagues are. We started to launch today the commercial network in one of the cities in the south of Turkestan. It is being built now, and we launched the first commercial station, which is going to service it commercially. But I would like mostly to share about those sort of slogan approach as we are launching. Well, but about issues with 5G, as it is, and the right question was raised about readiness. Technological readiness is not discussed because a huge number of R&D and vendor facilities are dealing with it. We are not even interfering because we have a lot of work of our own operational. So, and I suggest to discuss this specter. In my opinion, to launch 5G, mobile operators should be critically approaching the infrastructure they have made up in the 20 or 30 years of their existence. We're operating now at a minimum 4 networks. 2G for voice, 3G for voice and data, 4G, which we built, well, not really knowing where the infrastructure would go. We did it for data traffic. And now with 5G arrival, we are, to be quite candid, sorry for that, we are sort of at a crossroads, not clear where to go with the voice. Maybe it should go to 4G, for LTE. And the network did not mean servicing initially the voice, while it was meant for data and it was important to satisfy the client and not high-quality coverage. So I think that the global decision is to be made. Maybe we should set up a community as to how to get rid of 2G, 3G, to free the spectrum. And maybe we should understand how to attract and get the state involved and make people migrate to LTE and maybe help buying smartphones. And somewhere maybe we should provide safe coverage to provide access to emergency resources like 101, 102. I mean, and develop the 5G on the way. As colleagues repeated, and I can see that many now are ready for data traffic processing, though we have to think about the voice. So, piles of technical issues, to say nothing of the capabilities. And I think I would even request GSMA to maybe set up a separate discussion and arrange a separate discussion of this thing. Thank you. I don't think that it's regional Kazakh specifics, because 2G, 3G problematics started to be discussed in the technical group of GSMA a year ago during the lockdown time. And there are a lot of, well, at least in the Russian market, in Russian realities, in other markets, in U.S. market also, there are a lot of regulatory and purely business problems. The first problem here in Russia, as you all know, is that we have such a thing, which is called GLONASS, and every car has it installed. Every car which is imported into the territory of Russia. And no one thinks that it can use only 2G and 3G standards, and all cars will be without emergency connection if we, well, great case, by the way. But similar problems exist in Europe, where they have absolute analog of GLONASS. It's not our invention. It's a global thing. And in Europe, by standard, in the territory of European Union, they have to install this, which interacts with the operator, and it does not operate in 4G and that's a huge problem when they discuss 2G and 3G. In the United States, the biggest opponents are big business, and first of all, companies related to security, because all alarm systems installed in low-rise buildings are 2G and 3G devices. And certainly the transport in the States, as well as here, they use 2G, 3G devices still, because everybody wants to save, and 2 and 3G modules are cheap. Yes, that's a problem. Besides, we have a lot of terminals which refuse to get registered. And I'm not going to specify the names because they're quite advanced and well-known, respected brands, but they just don't want it. So there are a lot of issues. My personal opinion here is that 3G will die first. 2G will stay. 3G will be the first to die. But totally, well, I don't know. But I think that there are fewer technical problems. That's great that in Kazakhstan for commercial they already hand out the 5G. Maybe we should sort of exchange your experience, and we will tell you what to do with the world. And because with 4G in Russia we don't have any problems, and I'm surprised to hear that I think everybody here has federal coverage in LTE. Well, world is based on IMS. Well, is it okay, Konstantin, that we are sort of talking? Well, IMS is nothing new. That's, I think, appeared before the 3G, but it was used for fixed. But the way the respected international standardization organizations treated it, together with major vendors to implement the idea on LTE to transfer voice, I think personally that it was a plot. It was their conspiracy, sort of, because when we were launching it, there were so many surprises, we operators, and of course we have overcome it. And MegaFon recently launched the world all over the country, and currently we have half of it, half of the voice traffic is in LTE. So I would agree here that this phase already passed, we already over in our market, but 5G will have surprises, and this voice over system practically we don't have devices. We will have it today. Well, of course, but a year ago the situation was different. Everything's moving forward. I think that I agree that 3G will be the first to die. And I think that all operators are trying to well, we are doing it 2G and 3G LTE. And 3G, of course, will be the first to leave, as the German operators did, for instance, a month ago. I think that's what's in store for us also. Igor, to maybe finalize or recap about what you can see as global vendor, what goes on in where the most opportunities are, because as it's saying, mostly it's B2B, but we hope that it will happen one day, because Kazakhstan already lives in the circumstances. B2C, there will be some opportunities, and I can see the report of the company revenue not yet growing very much. First of all, I would like to revisit the question that about the 5G readiness. Well, you are happily ready. Well, of course we are, and we are making the 5G. Well, agree with my respected colleagues that 3G standard will be the first to go for the reasons colleagues have mentioned. A big number of ecosystems created in 2G and M2M devices, and their way is long yet. and telemedicine, which is now the talk of the town. It started to develop from 2G, and there are a lot of devices there. So GSM, I think, will stay with us for a longer time. But 3G, in all its, statistically, it goes first. In China, they already closed all the networks. But as for 5G and its applications, every year we can see that more and more operators coming and the ecosystem growing. Two or in three big centers are China, Korea, and North America. And each goes its own way. I'm not going to talk about North America for known reasons, but China. In China, it's the policy of transition of all traffic to 5G. And there was a vivid example, V2X, which had been developed in 4G, but then transferred to 5G, because this will provide the future. Different specifics. In Korea, mostly B2C is developing and video related. It's a specific case. When we talk with the operators, not yet clear whether you can replicate this behavioral human behavior. Well, it turns out that we are very different. Just can't imagine that our people will watch those nice things on the devices. So the psychology is different. China, so far, not going the Korean way. They have their own culture, short videos, TikToks, mostly B2C. But in China, B2B is developing quite well. And June data shows that about 5,000 experimental zones of B2B, 1,000 went down commercial contracts, and they pay a lot of attention to business models, different business models being tested, down to sale of equipment.
And then operators utilize it, or traditional methods. But what are the sectors that are very susceptible towards digitalization and 5G? The sectors that have never been acting a lot in IT. Number one is mining sector. But this actually looks quite natural. In mining, what happens out there? Large trucks and other types of vehicles get to become autonomous, unmanned, and their operations are not possible without high-definition cameras. 2 cameras per one excavator, it means 30 megabits, and 4G cannot offer such capacity. Wi-Fi, colleagues mentioned, yes, it is competing now, but it is impossible because, you imagine the conditions of a large pit and the landscape is quite complicated. So the only opportunity there is 5G. Number 2, steel casting factories, also large facilities, and then go ports. Wi-Fi was a challenge for everyone. 4G in China is not a competitor here because machine vision is utilized everywhere. Machine vision connected to the cloud, so the video from cameras is analyzed in the cloud. And latency is important. It is important to get the feedback very quickly to manage this process in real-time mode. So we see more opportunities for B2B sector here, and this shows, and our practice shows it in the market we know very well. We have much materials, not only in technologies and techniques, but business models. There are a lot of business models because companies are different, and not everyone can pay with cash, and companies are interested, and operators are interested. Operators in China split the verticals, the industries of the economy. 15 sectors went to China Mobile, and 10 went to China Unicom and China Telecom because they need competences. If you go to a production site, you do not know how to work there. But who is the judge out there? I just tried to translate it into Russian experience. I can say the following. Yes, operators agreed upon the terms. They all have their B2B clients, and probably they continued working with them. I just want to translate it to the Russian reality, and Korean experience probably is not as relevant. Sorry if I interrupted you. Well, probably that's it from me. Thank you very much. So, I think we might get back to this subject. I would like to ask a question about the differentiated servicing. What we see for a couple of years now, when we focus on clients and specificity of consumption of various services by various categories of clients, how networks will be restructured for this. Yes, they are adapting now, but how this process will go in the future. Looking at the tasks of differentiated servicing, yes, there are requirements in among consumers in IoT and B2B consumers and the B2C consumers, but this differentiation, how deep it will go? Will it consider individual specificities of specific companies or groups of consumers, and how it'll be resolved on the level of network infrastructure? Let me start. Actually, differentiation is not something new. Now we have SMS voice and data and voice over data, and this is serviced in various ways in various physical channels, so it all exists already. And there are current mechanisms of differentiation if we are just speaking about data transmission through LTE. Obviously, they are limited in terms of its functionality, and 5G in network slicing will bring us something new probably, and we'll be able to give new business models, offer them to the market, and implement a more interesting services. And since we are speaking about heavy industry today, heavy asset industry, usually those are localized projects, judging from our experience, and like tower excavator in the center of Moscow, and you need to differentiate things because there are various levels of requirements to our services. Probably no cases like that. The story is a bit different, and it is much simpler, but we are anticipating the maturing of 5G, and slicing, I think, will show its power. Yes, there are such opportunities now, and we're testing them. It's not at its peak of development, but I think we will see more interesting things to come, and that's what we're working in now. We are preparing for a wider application of 5G in our market. Thank you. In any case, we again get back to 5G. Without this, we will not be able to move further. This is a very creative theme, and in many cases, people get to this story of a hen and an egg. Though it's just 30 years here in Russia, history is repeating itself, but we do not believe that business cases can emerge, and we are anticipating it not doing anything, though. But then we just speaking about the traffic, which is growing, and we're not beneficiaries again. But B2C stories and that differentiation in 5G, the question is in the following. We act as enablers of the progress, right? And LTE could have been possible. It brought a lot of services. 5G also boosted development of technologies. But what people will use is an open question. But many new things will emerge. The question is, what do you do in order to get something from these trends? And, well, at least if not participating them, but find some value in them without waiting for them to just rush into your door. And another point, whether you are able to offer opportunities for these stories to emerge. How early these people who can create such ideas, how early they get to these technology, get access to these technologies, and from whom they can take this access, because they will be cooperating with those who can give them the access. Yes, there can be a regional specificity. Getting back to the previous cases, Korea and Japan are different cases. Their user interfaces are different, but China, I think, is also part of this group. When I first saw interfaces of IPTV of a Chinese service in Shanghai, I was scared. But nevertheless, you should always try and find, in their experience, since technologically wise they are much better than the Western market, from their experience we should try and find something relevant for ourselves. And it is obvious that in Asian markets, augmented reality went to the B2C market on mass scale. It and this technology lacks just a small bit to go even further and go across and conquer the world. And I think Apple will soon launch something in this area, glasses or something like that, as it was the case with apps and smartphones. Again, this turnpike will be opened. Many people will go there and we're like, wow, these things exist and people need them. So as for profit for operators, yes, this is an important question. Yes, Igor, please. Using this opportunity, since we started speaking about AR glasses, our stand at the end of the corridor, we show AR glasses. They look as if they are ordinary glasses. Yes, they are a bit heavier than ordinary glasses, but you can have a look at it. And tomorrow we'll have a panel discussion where we plan to speak about the application of digitalization in the industry and how to apply 5G and connectivity in the industry. And speaking about such services that emerged in Asia, and no one believed in such technologies here in Russia, there were cases like that. There was a case of ringback tone. We were thinking about whether we need it or not. People said that our people are different, but yes, CRBT indeed is a good case. Now they have video ringback tone, another thing, and everyone is doubtful again. Video ringback tone, is different. Even if we look up at YouTube, what is the most viewed video on YouTube? Baby Shark, more than 9 billion views for Baby Shark. A very simple song. This is not about us, actually. Not exactly. I agree with what you say about the glasses and that the turnpike will open, but it won't open instantly. This revolution should get matured from various sides. Gadgets should emerge and apps for them, or the current apps should become more available. We're looking at gaming very actively because gamers are the people who can pay for latency, and probably there will be areas and neighborhoods, game-friendly houses where you can play your games very quickly, 5G across all neighborhood, for instance, and people will buy apartments out there just because these places offer such services. I think it's possible. I think you underestimate the relevancy of this video in our market. I watched this Baby Shark for 10 times, I think. I could not stop watching it. Every time I started it over again, I thought, my God, 10 billion views. Oh my God. 10 billion and 1 and 2. Just from my side, since we are analytics and research agency. Our task is to monitor where the money is. The impression from tons of research we make is that the situation with IoT is quite obvious. Well, it is a revolution, and probably we cannot assess 100% how this technology will change our world in 10 or 20 or 30 years. And another large story is AR, VR, where we are at the threshold of a significant breakthrough, and it is relevant for Russia also. There are several categories of developers who work in this area for various tasks, for industry solutions, for entertainment solutions, expensive ones also, and some developers from Kazakhstan. I know them personally, and they are working in this area as well. So, what operators can make friends with them or merge with whom or integrate, that's also a very relevant point. But yes, mostly this is the market for. Yes, please. Where you can monetize 5G technology. We made our research, and we think that such things as massive MMTS and access with lowest latency with IoT and various digital projects for managing production, of course they will emerge, but they won't be on mass scale. We also see that one of the opportunities of slicing, for instance, an additional profit through technologies is so-called broadband access, fixed wireless access. Because in 5G, there are capabilities like beamforming, beam connection, and also capabilities to connect clients. Fixed consumers, the level of ARPU is much higher, and this means connecting households and business units or field offices, temporary connections. In our strategy, we focus on this opportunity, and now we are implementing it. We built the FAA network. Now we use 4G technology. It is isolated mobile network, and first sites we're launching now will support fixed wireless access. And this is a separate set of devices, group of devices. And there is no boom out there. You're right, colleagues. But we expect investments into development. And these devices can get lower, can become more affordable for B2C. Now these devices are quite expensive. Yes, this is an important thing. Let's develop this theme. Yes, I would like to support Nurlan. Indeed, the FWA users, the number grew 25 times during a year across the world, yes. And now we have a new solution, because FWA, how it went? It went through one story America. You remember the first 5G experiments. Every house had something. The penetration is permeability is very easy, but we have concrete structures and metallized glasses, and we have a house, a large house, and you need just one device, and through optic or copper infrastructure, you can send the signal. I think this might be a good solution for countries like Russia. Actually, other technologies, the fact of connection of a solution, wireless solution in Russia exists for several decades now. At a period of time, there was a hype technology called WiMAX, and everyone thought that WiMAX would win over 3G. But now, around 100,000 connections there are in WiMAX in Russia. WiMAX were proprietary technologies from developers. This is a simultaneously operating world, but those connections come from operators of mobile communication, and so they have such technologies in their portfolios. I would like to ask you about FWA and its understanding. Nurlan and Igor are mentioning. What is the status now? Because we see that in Russia there is much discussion around. And what is done in terms of infrastructure? Is there demand, and is there a risk for you? A risk that you cannibalize your own subscribers of wire access? For us, for me, this is a complicated question because we're not a mobile operator. We have a large fixed part of our business, and when looking at fixed wireless access cases, we've been looking at them for many years, starting the era of LTE, and with 5G, we're also looking into it, and we thought that we should pilot it. Europeans and Americans launch FWA, and we are not doing it. But we look at this story and we think that it's easier to bring fiber into apartments than make it wireless. We made a lot of tests and pilot zones for such cases. The physics of the process is as follows. In optics, the traffic, growing traffic, to have growing traffic is cheaper than doing the same thing with limited resource by air. That's why I'd say that we should look at where these guys are coming from and why using mobile network to watch Netflix on TV and bring cable to their apartments to just lift the load from the network. Yes, I would agree to what Viktor says. We also calculated all that and piloted all that. Actually, all Russian operators have a lot of FWA clients, but probably you also used your mobile internet for your Zoom with the boss during the pandemic. I think all of us did. We were all FWA clients. And going to our country houses, dachas, we stay in mobile network. And the number of requests to have your internet at your country houses, it grew. And when you calculate a residential apartment, and if you just make it all through mobile connection, not fiber, it'll be too expensive. Not only residential house, but a large block of flats, even in low rise neighborhoods, it's cheaper to bring fiber than use mobile connection. Okay, but the main cases are coming from B2C, am I right? Yes, this is B2C. The main demand comes from B2C. In B2B, yes, there's something, but B2C is leading in its statistics in terms of figures. Interestingly enough, or it is just cases where houses stand far away from each other. In the United States, for instance, they have more than 1 million of satellite subscribers. This is a fantastic figure, knowing about the pricing. You know, in America, their system is different. In the United States, they have a large area at the north covered by Starlink. This is a zone where mobile and fixed connection is bad, but people live there and the population is large. And, you know, the amount of people living in the United States 2 times more than in Russia. Ookla research shows where Starlink users are located and what service they get. You can see that this belt goes next to the border with Canada. And on the other side as well, at the border with the United States and Canada. The availability of our service, interestingly enough, with ARPU, we have the availability of mobile communication and internet access in our country is much higher than in many other countries of the world. That's why, probably, that's the reason. Yes, probably that's not a means for 100% coverage, but we just need to know that there is an instrument like that. And operators in Philippines, where there are several thousands of islands and you cannot put fiber in there, they use FWA. And Europe, for instance, when an operator calculates a case, I do not remember exactly, probably it was T-Mobile or Deutsche Telekom. They sent their B2B clients, filling station, mobile filling stations. They gave them FWA. Why? This is copper. That's why. Distributed chain of filling stations across the country, a very good client, and much demand to reset the optics for them. Well, they calculated it turned out to be very expensive, so they offered FWA and met the requirements of the client quite quickly. Using the public 5G that goes through slicing mechanism and offer them guaranteed slice. A very good case indeed. There are a lot of cases of successful application of the technology, but in every case, this is some specificity to it, or it might be bad history of fixed communication. In the United States, fixed internet is bad, low speed, 13 megabit per second. FCC set a standard for minimal speed, but operators of fixed access can offer. That's why, and also they distributed the poles with the cords. In every case, there is some specificity as an additional weapons in the arsenal is good to have, but we need to look at the spectrum resource. In our case, we're not Verizon with 400 megahertz spectrum in 4G. We cannot afford to cut the slice for FWA. That's why there's always some specificity around various cases. I agree to what Valery says, and we need to look at all these cases very seriously, because even Verizon, with their huge spectrum and mass experiments in the millimeters, if you look attentively at in what markets they make their experiments in fixed asset, you see that those are the markets where the quality of the fixed network is very bad. In the markets and states where Verizon has strong fixed networks, they do not build fixed wireless access or millimeter systems. They put fiber everywhere. And all other operators act in the same way. When you are not in the market, of course, you can try and penetrate it through this, but the economics is quite challenging. Okay, I understand. Thank you. And Nurlan, what are the main cases? What are the main types of clients you usually focus? I cannot agree with many points. FWA is a separate segment.
Which does not allow you to lay the infrastructure, and the demand is high related to pandemic. And I would disagree with calculations. The cost of wireless internet, even with LTE, is 2 times cheaper than any thing like Pono, when you have to build distributed optics and some units to be serviced in the future. So the market we estimated, private segment, remote, not remote, I mean, from the point of view, it's difficult to reach it, the destination, but to lay the infrastructure when the road, when the fences are already there, and they will not be able to disclose it, to unfold it. So there are now. Why we use the LTE and we distance from their proprietary networks, and we are developing mobile. We are planning to generate it on the 5G, and we build it already in the way to be able to get over to 5G, to use the beamforming. The segment, if totally, we have about 4 million of households, 2 in the cities out of 1 million or 1.5 really accessible, and we will do the optics. So 500,000 households we will never service with optics because it will never pay back. FWA, yes, it does pay back, and quite effectively so. In 3 cities we are launching it. Of course, you have to work with the regulator. You cannot build your networks and the frequencies that are used for mobile, because the prices are different, and we launched the mobile technology. So we have justified it that mobile technology, by the way, we're working with 5G in the same way. We explained to the regulator that mobile 5G technology is not only for mobile connections, it's needed as a technology, like Ethernet. It's not for home computers, it's for the industry. It's free of charge, of course, but still, the approach should be promoted, and thus we are trying to achieve it and they do give us opportunities to use the most effective technologies to connect households. Well, let's hope that the Russian regulator would listen to the operators better, and we might have more cases. So let's finish at that. Let's say thank you to all the panelists. And an announcement. Second floor, I think we have buffet and networking. Thank you.